My name is Mary Catherine Mahalik, and I am with the Heritage Foundation. So before we begin this session, I get the pleasure of just giving you a little summary of our internship program that we have at the Heritage Foundation. We are a conservative think tank based here in Washington, D.C., and I may be biased, but I think we have the best internship program in the city. We have over 50 interns that come every spring, summer, and fall. And it's a really unique internship because you get not only the real-world experience of working at the Heritage Foundation in either different departments that are researching policy, or we have our government relations office, our events team. There's a ton of different departments that you get professional experience in, but we also have a really robust lecture series where you get to hear from speakers who are in the top of their field, either researching different policy areas or they've worked in a presidential administration, they maybe have worked on the Hill, and our interns get to hear from them and really receive intellectual formation over these different areas. So if you're interested at all, we have our applications open for the summer and the fall. We would love to have you join us at the Heritage Foundation. So we're going to get started with our panel today. I'm really excited to introduce our speakers that we have. This session is titled Bioethics and the Future of Abortion. And our panel that we have, I'm just going to go down the line. We have Christy Hamrick with Students for Life of America. We have Dr. David Prenist with the Charlotte Lozier Institute. We have Katie Faust with Them Before Us, and Dr. Richard H. Sandler with the Pro-Life Council of American College of Pediatricians. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to them. Thank you.
I really appreciate you all coming today because I want to encourage you to join me in my lifelong obsession in stomping out certain kinds of technologies that are very much like a brave new world. And I don't want to do a show of hands, that's awkward. I don't know if anybody remembers reading Aldous Huxley's Brave New World in school. For the sake of argument, there's a movie. But in this book, the government hands out your job, they suppress your fertility, they grow children in artificial wombs, and they control everything until one noble savage, accidentally born from a normal birth, kind of points out that there's a flaw. Oh, of course, and they kill him at the end. So here we are, apparently prepared to die. Just kidding. When I was a reporter, my career has involved I came to Washington, D.C. as a reporter and a journalist. I was a Pulliam Fellow with Danny Pearl, the reporter who was executed for his work at the Wall Street Journal by terrorists. And I did a lot of work on the commodification of children. The fact that through technology, people are bought and sold in vitro. And then when I was at the Family Research Council, because frankly my bio includes working for almost everyone, I got involved in opposition to chemical abortion pills. And it has been the cancer that has infested the abortion mentality and the abortion business model. 2 pills in the US, one of whom, and I don't say this lightly because you can fact check this with the New York Times, was created by a man called the father of the abortion pill who got the money from Roussel Uclef, which is tied to the company that created the drugs that killed the Jews. That is the origin of the first of the 2 drugs in chemical abortion pills. There are active metabolites that are unnatural in this drug that attack your placenta and starve the baby. The second drug is to start contractions. It exposes women in the no-test online distribution system of the Biden administration to injury, infertility, and death. It also sets up exposure to abusers. It's the sex trafficker's drug of choice because they can just dose the hell out of you. Right now, there's a case in Florida, for example, of a woman who got these drugs to slip to the pregnant girlfriend of her ex. That's the kind of world we live in. You don't need to be pregnant. You don't need to be a woman. You don't need to be seen by a doctor. You are exposed to death through lack of care and concern for ectopic pregnancy. I am Rh negative and had a series of shots to protect my fertility. If you're Rh negative, which 15% of the population is, if you don't get a RhoGAM shot in an exchange of blood through birth, through miscarriage, or through abortion, within 24 to 48 hours, you can be sterilized for life. Do they tell you this when they ship these pills out to you to check your blood type? Do they tell you to get an ultrasound because that could destroy your fertility? No, they don't. Here's something else they don't tell you. The active metabolites in these drugs that pass into our wastewater system continue to have an effect, so that NIH public studies show us that these metabolites affect aquatic, plant, and animal life, and I'd like you to think of that under the umbrella term food supply. Think about that. We are suppressing the fertility of our bodies, we are suppressing the fertility of nature, and we are flushing human remains into our wastewater system, something that hospitals can't do and not even brick and mortar facilities can do. We're going to have a guided thing. So now that I've scared you, and I hope you're as scared as I am, when I was at Family Research Council, Bill Clinton, he campaigned on his desire to bring these pills onto the US market. I have a picture of myself in my wedding dress 31 years ago throwing Clinton Gore signs into the Potomac. I think the statute of limitations has ended for littering, I hope, because Students for Life put that picture in a documentary. I'm a little bit worried. What I'm concerned about and what we're afraid of, and each of us is going to talk about a problem and what we're afraid of. I'm afraid that the FDA will continue to fail us by applying any kind of medical logic to the distribution of a drug. Even if you support abortion, that is not an argument for no-test online distribution of these pills, and it is certainly not an argument for flushing human remains and placenta tissue into the wastewater in a way that could literally sterilize us all. God help us. So now that you're scared, I want to frighten you further and pass this on to Dr. Prentice.
Thanks, Christy. Well, as an old professor, I'll give a pop quiz. How many in here were never an embryo? Okay. Hey, you all realize that, and we keep getting this question, but science has known this for at least 100 years. Ronan O'Rahilly, who is an old embryologist who came up with what are called the Carnegie stages of life, to show at their very earliest stage how you looked at every stage, has said prenatal age begins at fertilization, postnatal begins at birth. But we keep getting these phrases that, well, you're not really a human being, you're an embryo, you're a potential person, and so on. I want to do sort of a parallel industry to the abortion industry, and it's the reproductive technology industry. IVF is the most well-known, but there are other assisted reproductive technologies. This is also preying on people, on women especially, to manufacture children for the desires of adults. First IVF baby was born in 1978, and since then there have been about 12 million IVF babies born. Cute, pretty little babies, and that's the picture they hold up to you. What they don't hold up is that there were 100 million embryos created during that period of time. What happened to the others? Well, they really didn't make the grade. And when I say make the grade, that's a literal term that is used. If you are made as an embryo in the Petri dish in an IVF lab, you're then graded. You're grown for a few days, and they give you a grade to decide whether you are high quality or not. Well, if some of you are high quality, there are others that are low quality. Human beings graded as a manufactured product that may or may not make the quality control. There's genetic testing that's done called prenatal genetic diagnostics. Again, to decide whether you make the cut. Another old embryologist, Robert Edwards, has said, soon it will be a sin for parents to have a child that carries the heavy burden of genetic disease. We're entering a world where we have to consider the quality of our children. Again, this is a technology that's eugenic. It's used to manufacture children, to manufacture embryos, and then you're graded in terms of the product. There are risks to the women that donate the eggs. Very often, it's not the prospective mother, but there are egg donors, literal recruiters who go out, usually on college campuses, and offer a few $1,000s to young women to donate their eggs. The process involves huge doses of hormones so that you get not one or two, but 10 or 20 or 30 eggs at a time, surgically removed. About 20% of the women that undergo that have what's called ovarian hyperstimulation syndrome. It's a life-threatening syndrome where fluid accumulates in the abdomen and in the chest cavity. It can actually stop your heart or cause other problems. The surgery can nick an artery and cause bleeding. So it again is a risk to the women, but it's also a risk, this technology, to you as an embryo if you're being created and manufactured. We're finding out that there are risks of increased rates of birth defects, of certain types of cancers, even of effects on your aging as you get older and your cognitive abilities. And there's also this little risk that if you were frozen, because if you're making 10 embryos, they don't all go in the womb at the time. A lot of you get frozen for future use, maybe. Only about half the embryos survive that freezing. And so there are a lot of risks to mom. There are a lot of risks to the egg donor, even if she's not mom. There are a lot of risks to the embryo. And it's all, again, for a product. Children are not treated as children and gifts of God. They're treated as commodities and manufactured products. I'll go ahead and give my worries. I've got three, actually, that sort of parallel each other. One has to do with the continued march of these technologies. It's not enough now to just combine an egg and sperm in the dish, and we've got some embryos, and we'll put some in the freezer, but we'll put some in the womb. By the way, the efficiency since 1978 has not increased. It's still about 25% success rate for that. But now they're coming up with other ways to make embryos, more technological ways. You might not have even heard of them, but there are now 3-parent embryos where you combine parts of 2 eggs. The basis is supposedly to get around some genetic problems, but it's really to try and come up with a better way to make an embryo. So 2 moms, you've got to send 2 Mother's Day cards. 2 moms, 2 eggs, 1 dad. It's actually a form of cloning. Now, we don't know for sure that anyone has tried to gestate a cloned embryo other than these 3-parent ones, but that's coming, and it might surprise you that the reproductive technology industry has never said they won't use cloning to create and gestate embryos. In congressional hearings, what they've said years ago is that, well, we won't do that for now. We'll just kind of wait till the technology matures and we think it will be useful. You can now also clone and make embryos not the old-fashioned way, but by combining different stem cells to make what are now termed synthetic embryos or embryo models. But it's really another form of cloning, and you can make tremendous numbers of these and then use them for experiments or maybe gestate some of them and so on. So there are technological creeps along the way, but it's still a matter of considering these little ones as commodities. Now, a couple of other quick worries I have is in terms of data. The CDC data in terms of reproductive technologies is not very good. It's voluntary, tell us your statistics. And they're not regulating any of this industry at all. The abortion industry is pretty much the same. At Lozier Institute, we've been trying to track this and get better numbers, and so far succeeding by going directly to the states to get their numbers. The CDC numbers are vast underestimates, we'll just put. But another worry is whether the data will continue to be valid, because with the rise of chemical abortion, you now don't know how many women are maybe getting abortion pills, taking them, going to the ER and saying, well, I'm having a miscarriage. And so you don't really know. And then the third worry, which goes along with that, is the science is being suppressed. I have colleagues who have been threatened with having their science retracted from the journals simply because it showed the dangers of chemical abortion and the problems with abortion. So we're facing a future where we'll be told, this is all safe, this is all fine, nobody's getting hurt, where the truth will be far different.
Well, Little round of applause for Mr. Charlotte Lozier over here. Because, like, literally, you're hired. That was every single thing that I was going to say, and I was like, okay, get it done. Get it done, baby. No, I love it. Because honestly, if we are serious about preserving embryonic life, the baby-making industry destroys more embryonic life than the baby-taking industry every year. Okay? So if you really care about every life from conception, then you're against IVF in almost all cases. So I'm not going to go into that. You did it. Fantastic. Well done. So we'll take another tact here, okay? And that is that tactically, what I think that we need to be focusing on is my organization. So, okay, quick question for you guys. How many of you guys, raise your hand if you know or have heard of more than 10 different pro-life organizations? Okay, great. And how many of you guys think that you might know or have heard about more than 20 pro-life organizations? Okay, great. Anybody think that they know of like 25 pro-life organizations? Think state level, international, national. Anybody 25-ish? Yeah? Okay. So the reality is, thank God, we have dozens of organizations defending children's right to life. It is our primary right. If you don't nail this down, you get nothing else. So it's critical. Children also have rights on this side of the womb as well. Okay, once you safeguard their right to life, children also have a natural right to be known and loved by the two people responsible for their existence, their mother and father. Now, that is the lens that Them Before Us takes whenever we look at any marriage and family issue. And what I love is I think the pro-life world has shown us the effective way to talk about marriage and family, and that is child-centric. So we, Them Before Us, as far as I know, are the only organization committed to defending children's rights in marriage and family. And we need to adopt some of the same tactics that the pro-life world has used. So let me talk a little bit about that. First of all, talking about children and their rights based on natural law. These are natural rights. We're going to advocate for these fundamental natural rights, whether or not civil law recognizes them, because they remain true even if a Supreme Court says they don't matter and they don't exist, right? That's what happened with Roe. The Supreme Court said this discussion is over. And so simply children don't have a right to life. And you all and generations that went before you said, I don't think so. Children do have a natural right to life, whether or not our civil laws recognize it. So similarly, about 9 years ago, the Supreme Court said, in essence, children do not have a right to their mother and father, right? That functionally, children can be regarded as accessories, items to be cut and pasted into any and every adult relationship. That's what happens when you redefine marriage. When you make husbands and wives optional in marriage, you make mothers and fathers optional in parenthood law. So question for you. When was the last time you heard any federal office holder even say, or any government institution say, children should have a mother and father? Have you heard that recently? Right, you haven't. Because now to even recognize that fundamental natural reality is considered discrimination. It's discriminatory to say children should have a mother, not even that they have a right to it, but that they should have it. Okay, so we need to, in the marriage and family world, I often talk about how if anti-abortion work is children's rights 1.0, marriage and family needs to be children's rights 2.0. Okay, because let's just talk about the importance of a child's right to their mother and father. So, question for you. Let me just give you a little multiple choice option here. If you could solve one of the four issues, one of these four issues, if you could just wipe it away, which one would you choose? The first one is teen homelessness. Second one is child poverty. Third one is teen suicide. Fourth one is teen pregnancy. How many of you guys would choose homelessness? Just say, no more of that. Every kid has a place to live, safe. Okay, good, yeah, there's a few of you. How many of you guys would say no more child poverty? Totally wipe out child poverty. How many of you guys would say there will be no teen that kills themselves this year? Okay, good. How many of you guys would say there will be no more unexpected teen pregnancies? Okay, good. Now for me, I have a really hard time choosing. I want to end them all. I want to solve them all. I want to wipe them all away. What if I told you there was an all of the above option? Thank you, sir. You want that one? Same. I also want that one. I want an all of the above option where you do one thing, you wipe out all of these. And the answer is, there is an all of the above option. And it's cheap. And it's easy. And it's accessible to everyone. And you know what that option is? Fathers married to the mothers of their children in 100% of cases. Okay? That's it. Because what do you see? When you look at all of, not just those 4 issues, every major social issue that we are fighting today, right, that we have organizations devoted to handling and suicide hotlines and massive amounts of welfare and all of the different things, like hundreds of millions of dollars and all kinds of organizations and programs to solve all those different demographics, they have something in common. They're overpopulated with fatherless children. 90% of teens on the street didn't have a dad in their life. And by the way, that's a gateway for human trafficking. You want to end human trafficking? Marriage, in 100% of cases. You're 4 times more likely to live in poverty if you're a child growing up without your father in your home. 71% of teens that commit suicide don't have a dad. 63% of teen pregnancies come from fatherless homes. If you can defend a child's right to be known and loved by their mother and father, you fix pretty much every social issue that we're facing today. Now, humanity has struggled for quite a while to solve the problem of children who face delinquency or struggle in school or have mental health or physical health or obesity problems or whatever it is. I mean, this is not a new problem for humanity. Very interestingly, all the major religions of the world, most societies throughout history, have come to the same conclusion. The way to safeguard not just individual child thriving, but social thriving, is to insist that fathers commit to women before they have sex with them and stay with them for life. Okay? That is called marriage. So that is how we need to understand this, okay? Why is it that defending children's rights to their mother and father has that level of power? Why, if you defend this fundamental child right to their mother and father, do you pretty much end high incarceration rates, teen pregnancy, teen homelessness, child poverty, every major social ill? Why is that? Because a child's own mother and father give something to children that no other adults do. Number one, they are statistically the adults who are most connected to, invested in, and protective of kids. And you can fact check me on this. Okay, get your phone out. Get your phone out. I see you're like, yes, no, get it out. And I want you to Google the words mother's boyfriend. Google mother's boyfriend for me. Because what we're saying about marriage and family is that biology doesn't matter. Any two will do. Love makes a family, right? Kids don't need moms and dads. They just need to be safe and loved. Well, if that's the case, then a child being raised by their mother and her cohabiting live-in boyfriend would be doing great. Because there's 2 adults, there's a male and female presence. If the adults are happy, the children will be happy. And guess what? A mom and her live-in boyfriend, very happy. Their needs are totally met. Who Googled that for me? What did you find? Give me your top hit. Okay, child abuse, high rank. What else? Gunshot? What else? Yep. Why are mothers' boyfriends so likely to kill? Okay, so you could go through tens of thousands of pages and you're going to read the most horrific cases of child abuse and filicide that you're going to see anywhere on the internet. An unrelated adult living and sharing living spaces with a child who's left to care for the child alone is statistically the most dangerous person in a child's life. Family structure is a matter of justice and child protection. The second reason why this matters so much to children is those 2 adults grant children their biological identity. It's very hard to answer the question, who am I, if you can't answer the question, whose am I? And this is why, in adoption, we have shifted away from closed adoption to open adoption. 95% of adoptions today are open. They have some degree of connectedness and relationship with their first family. And third, when you defend children's rights to their mother and father, you get the perfect gender balance in the home 100% of the time. Moms and dads offer distinct and complementary benefits to children. It maximizes their development, and it satisfies their longing for maternal and paternal love so they do not crave it from unhealthy or dangerous sources. So, I just want to encourage you. We need to take the same child-centric messaging and mentality, the lens of, I understand that you're struggling and you're scared because of this diagnosis or this unexpected pregnancy, and I'm going to empathize with you and walk with you, but no amount of adult longing or loss justifies violating this child's right to life. Right? That's how all of you feel about the abortion issue. Now we take that same mentality into marriage and family, and we say, I understand that you are dealing with a challenging marriage situation, you're struggling with infertility, you experience same-sex attraction, you have gender confusion, you desperately want to be a mother or father and haven't found Mr. or Mr. Right, and I will empathize with you, and I will walk with you, and I will bear your burden. But no amount of your longing or loss justifies violating a child's right to their mother and father. In both of these areas, someone is going to do the hard thing. Either it is going to be the adults who sacrifice to protect the rights of the child, or the child would have to lose their rights to satisfy the desires of adults. So we, as child protectors, need to take our child-centric mentality from the pro-life movement and move into the marriage and family world as well. We need to see this as the second front of child protection, right? Anti-abortion work secures children's survival. Marriage and family work ensures children's thriving.
Hi. They've said what I want to say. My name is Richard Sandler. I'm a pediatrician, almost 50 years now in medicine. There's a group, you have the flyer, something on your chair there, American College of Pediatricians, not to be confused with the American Academy of Pediatrics, which is a woke institution. Our three goals here are to fight for the unborn, to oppose the craziness of gender-affirming technology and mutilating young, mixed-up teenagers, and to protect the ability of physicians to exercise their conscience, rather than being told you must commit abortion or you must commit euthanasia and a whole bunch of other slippery slopes. So check it out. We're here as a resource for you. I've been asked today, I thought, to address the pill abortion pill, chemical abortion. The abortionists call this medical abortion. We don't like that term because medical means, well, maybe we're trying to help people, and killing babies is not healthcare. So it's chemical abortion. You all have heard about it. I'm going to give you just some details on what this is, and two, some details on the risk and what the current monitoring is or not, and then share the concerns. So doing this chemical abortion is two pills. Mifepristone is it's also called RU486, and it's Mifeprex is the brand name. It's a single pill, 200 milligrams, just a little white pill, you take it. And it opposes progesterone. Progesterone is a hormone that enables the lining of the uterus to support the baby. So you overwhelm the little binders there that the progesterone can attach to, and then the uterus lining stops working. And what does that do? It cuts off the oxygen, so the babies are asphyxiated, they choke to death, and it cuts off the food, so they starve to death. It's not pretty. The second pill, taken 24 to 48 hours later, is called misoprostol. Misoprostol has been around for a long time. It's used in a lot of other things, so it's going to be a hard one to get rid of. It's used for protection from peptic ulcer disease. But what it does is it's a prostaglandin agonist. It makes the uterus contract like heck. So the mifepristone kills the baby. And the misoprostol expels the baby. Okay? It's kind of a gruesome process. The risks, it's amazing. It's amazing to be in this universe. You know, we're entitled to our own opinion, but we shouldn't be entitled to our own facts. And the level of, lying is extraordinary. And so if you go to Planned Parenthood's website and you were curious about the safety of the agent, you will see them say, quote, it's as safe as Tylenol. Well, really? So the manufacturer, Denko, puts out a monograph which lists the adverse effects and lists their incidence. And I'm not going to rely on my memory. I brought it up in the computer here. Quotes, about 85% of patients report at least one adverse reaction following administration of mifepristone and misoprostol. Really? Does that sound like Tylenol? Partial list of the effects in the handout, for goodness sakes. You don't have to dig in the literature very far to find this. Diarrhea, 30%, nausea, 60%, vomiting, 45%, weakness, 60%, and 40% of chills, dizziness, headache, fever. Okay, that stuff. Now the serious stuff. Vaginal bleeding. Everybody gets vaginal bleeding. It's not a little bit of vaginal bleeding. It's 9 to 16 days on average, sometimes longer than 30 days of severe cramps and vaginal bleeding. Well, anemia, shock, sepsis, all kinds of bad stuff. So, obviously the FDA and the pro-abortionists are not concerned about the safety of the baby. Goes without saying. You'd think they'd be concerned about the safety of the moms. And initially, there was some effort to do that. The pregnancy, that you had to see an actual doctor who had to determine that you were 10 weeks or less along, and that this was not an ectopic pregnancy, and that you didn't have a whole host of conditions that would make chemical abortion really, really a bad idea in terms of risky for the mom. And the FDA had a, quotes, risk evaluation and mitigation strategy, which they watered down and then watered down again. So that now the only thing that has to be reported are maternal deaths. You don't have to report sepsis. You don't have to report shock. You don't have to report, etc. And, as pointed out, we don't even have good data on that because the ladies, when they go to the ER, don't say, I just took an abortion pill. They're told by Planned Parenthood to say, oh, I'm having a miscarriage. So we don't have data on this. All right. So most recently, as you know, the FDA has even said, well, you don't have to have a doctor. And now, as Abby Johnson pointed out this morning to us, you can go on the web, and there's over 70 sites, and you can just get these pills yourself. How about that? Well, we've been asked to say what we're worried about. One of my colleagues, Robin Prucci, is a wonderful, wonderful mommy neonatologist friend. I texted her right before. I said, hey, I'm just about to go in. What do you think's the most important thing? What do you want me to say? Quotes, The thought of not only the baby but the mother dying alone as she risks hemorrhaging or other labor complications away from medical supervision is beyond heartbreaking. How do we get the word out that chemical abortion is anything but safe? We've been asked to say, okay, what are we really worried about here? There's so much to worry about. Love God. Love your friends. We can't control the outcome. Be happy warriors. My wonderful wife teaches me this all the time because I get a little worked up, but she's a happy warrior. What am I worried about? Well, listen, this stuff is getting to be very available, and it's going to be a hard thing to prevent. And with the availability will be more babies killed, will be more risk to the mom, will be more recreational sex outside of marriage and outside of caring, will be, it's sort of consistent with, this is a wonderful audience. I can't tell you how touched I am to see you young people caring and stepping forward. This little beanie that I wear is to remind me that there is a higher authority to who I am responsible and I should act accordingly. And in the end, that we have to live this out. What am I concerned about? That our values, that the chemical abortion is one significant factor that is leading us away from Judeo-Christian values, is leading us away from family and the value of family and mothers and fathers. And this is not a good thing. And we have to work on the legislative front, but you know, as this stuff is super available, it's really the battle of hearts and minds. Because if there's all kinds of rules out there, but you can still get it rather freely, it's going to be acted out, right? So you've heard the analogy often with slavery and so many other things. Even if there were laws permitting slavery right now, there are very few people who would say, oh yeah, that's a really good idea, and be going for it, right? So that's where the battle is of hearts and minds. And so we've given you some bad news, but the good news is you are here, you care, you're understanding this, and that's where it starts. Thanks.
So we have perspectives from a lot of different people working on the issues related to fertility. We're going to have somebody come up so that you guys can ask a question. But I think, so you can line up and ask questions if you wish, but I think to ask a question of the panel, actually. What we have done is severed fertility from relationship, and we've even severed humanity from children. There's something that we can buy and sell. There's something we can barter away. I can sell pieces of myself, my eggs or whatever I'd like to sell. How has that, I don't know, capitalistic mindset, really poisoned this? And speaking for myself, I find it fascinating that the one thing that doesn't matter in the sale of chemical abortion pills or IVF is the fact that, and also, frankly, the sterilization of children with sex-altering protocols, is the fact that you lose your ability to ever have a child. How is it that we have come to the point where through various technologies, we are sacrificing fertility, and I don't know for what? How has that impacted us? I'd like to hear all you guys.
Well, there was actually a report in 2005 related to this point, and the title of it was Sex for Fun, IVF for Children. The idea is that self-gratification is what's more important, and then we'll take care of that fertility thing with technology and so on.
I can't even work my computer.
So, I'm not a Catholic. I am a pastor's wife, carrying my Bible with me ever. I'm an absolute evangelical Bible thumper. But the Catholics were right about the shockwaves of birth control to the mindset around sex and marriage, right? That what we did is we separated sex from babies, right? We cut the connection between sex and diapers. And that was sort of the first conceptual step of, I don't exist for them, they exist for me. I decide about the kids, right? It's not just, hey, I'm going to be open and welcome to the children that result from this sexual union. It's, I'm the gatekeeper, I decide when they come and go. And then we turned that around and we said, so we had sex without babies. Very soon on the heels of that, we figured out how to make babies without sex. And we're saying, they exist for me. Right, those kids exist for me. And so the same mentality, honestly, and this was fueled again, like that same they exist for me mentality is really what underpins abortion too, right? I don't exist for them, they exist for me. If they're inconvenient, unwanted, then I can violate their right to life and force them out of existence. What's the mentality towards lab-made babies is if they are very wanted, I can violate some child's right to life and force them into existence. Okay? And if they're very wanted and I'm single or in a same-sex relationship, I can violate their right to their mother and father and force them into existence. They exist for me. I don't exist for them. Honestly, it's spilled over into the adoption world too, where we think I have a right to a child. You have same-sex couples or LGBT adults who say, I have a right to adopt. You've got some people that deal with infertility who say, well, this is the way for me to have kids. No. Adults don't exist. Children don't exist for adults. Adults exist for children. In adoption does not exist to give kids to adults. Adoption exists to provide parents to children who have lost them. It is a child-centric institution. The child is the client. So in all of these different areas, we have said, they exist for me. Right? I determine their rights and their well-being, whether or not they're connected to their mother and father, if I want it. And that is the problem with elevating sex to the level of God, right? My sexual identity, my sexual feelings, my sexual desires. When that becomes God, because sex is connected to babies, children are always the sacrifice. They're always the sacrifice. So we have to, especially if you're a believer, especially if you're a pro-lifer, we have to say, no. Children have a right to life. They have a right to their mother and father. And that means that all adults, single, married, gay, straight, fertile, infertile, planned, unplanned, all adults conform to the rights of children, because the only alternative is forcing children to sacrifice their rights for you, and that is a recipe for an unjust society.
So all these problems are connected, aren't they? And the disconnection from a sense of that there's a higher order, and the focus on narcissism, what's good is what's good for me. And then these other things follow from that. And that's what we have to call out. And kids are yearning for that sense of purpose and connection, and there's a joy in taking responsibility, and there's an aimless, pathetic waste in not, in just, okay, what's in it for me? Again, so I'm so glad you're here, because I know you guys know all that. But that's what ties it together. It's taking responsibility within a sense of a higher order of what's right.
So let's take a couple questions. Please, questions and not speeches, so more people can get a shot.
Thank you. My question was, and you just touched on a little bit of it, was besides that kind of broader layout of talking about why in the IVF conversation, these other issues that children are not just commodities and bought for people. How might we, on like a personal level, I'm not currently at an age where I would be having this as a personal conversation with peers, but maybe in the future, would I have a conversation with someone maybe considering one of these reproductive technologies and say that, you know, you might want this, you might struggle with fertility, or your relationship might not be one which can produce children, but you are not entitled to children, that no one is entitled to children. How might I have that conversation?
Well, you can know the natural law arguments. My recommendation is be an expert, no more than they do about all of this. So that's where you begin. You can certainly know the arguments, but I think the best way to approach this is make them read the stories of children who are intentionally motherless or fatherless, or purchased through the world of big fertility, who lost a connection with a biological parent or two, who feel commodified, who feel like they were a eugenics project, who struggled with identity issues, who experienced mother or father hunger because they were raised in an intentionally motherless or fatherless home. I would say make them read it and say, what about the child? What do we owe them? What would you say to your kid if you, because you're 40 and you haven't found Mr. Right and you think, well, it's my time to be a mom and I'm entitled to this? What would you say to that child when he says, why don't I have a dad? Where is he? Does he know that I exist? And you're the person responsible for his absence. So it's unlike adoption in the sense that we have one study that compares outcomes between children created through third-party reproduction and adoptees. And very interestingly, the adoptees fare better, even though they're being raised by neither biological parent, versus the sperm donor kids who are always being raised by biological mother. Why is that if biology confers such advantage? It's because when you're born of big fertility, you are being raised by the adults who inflicted your parental wound. In adoption, you're being raised by adults who are seeking to mend your parental wound. And that creates a distinct psychological difference, right? I can enter into my adopted child's loss and mourn with him and question with him and grieve with him. If that sperm donor kid goes to his single mother by choice and says, I really want a dad, he's talking to the person responsible for his father's absence. And that means that he has an additional psychological burden. I just say, you know, you're considering this, will you read 20 stories of children created through sperm donation and then think again?
I have one funny idea for you, too. Vince Vaughn's movie, Delivery Man, fathered 500 children through in vitro, and those kids wanted to know their dad. And I cry every time I see it.
So throughout this talk, I've heard a lot about what's worrying the four of you, but I mean, we know that you're worried about these things, like our world becoming like a brave new world, or the continued commoditization of children, disintegration of the family. How are you using your expertise, either in like medicine or biology, molecular biology, to combat these issues? It's like, I heard that you're worried about it, but I didn't really hear any solutions.
I can speed through quickly some things Students for Life is doing. We have 4 citizens petitions filed at the FDA as a precursor to lawsuits against what they're doing with chemical abortion pills. We have Standing With You, a website that provides women with services and information, such as the services up here in connection to these experts. We need to connect with the women who are making these decisions in real time, and we are working to do that at Students for Life, but frankly, I don't think there's a lot of good ways to change this without legal action and legislative action. So that is, and if you go to our website, we could get more information, because I know we're running out of time, but trust me when I say that's about what I do 20 hours a day, and then I have lunch.
Let me just add real quick, besides the Lozier Institute does do a lot of legislative intervention, media interviews, a lot of this is also education, making sure people know the facts. And in fact, I don't know if everybody got one, but there's a little card, Voyage of Life. Go to that website. It's one we put together so that you can learn the actual facts in terms of human development from conception to birth. There's also another little thing on there called the Handbook of Nascent Human Beings. It's accessible, it's easily readable, but learn the basic facts about that so that you then can intervene yourself and talk about, well, this is what really is going on, this misleading facts and lying and so on that we keep getting out there. We need to intervene in terms of that and just keep repeating the truth until it sinks in.
You know, we'll stay and talk with y'all. Apparently we have time for one more question, so you win.
Thank you. When it comes to, I guess, embryos being developed in a lab, let's say we get rid of, obviously, the IVF and all that stuff, and there are still viable embryos there. What would we do with them exactly?
Well, we're big fans of snowflake adoption, but Dr. Prentice, you know more than me.
Well, and I think that is one answer. My view is those are little frozen orphanages. And those living human beings do deserve a chance to proceed on through their development. They don't have a real good chance, as I mentioned, only about a 50% chance once you thaw them out. But any chance is better than no chance at life.
So would you say then they should be inserted into a womb by then?
My position would be that, yeah, they ought to have the opportunity, and there are lots of couples actually, and the snowflakes are not the only group for this type of adoption of embryos, but it's done in a way to provide them a family structure and some identity.
I'll jump in too and say that when you create a child that is unwanted or unplanned, the solution is not adoption. The solution is parenting. Okay, if you make a baby, the number one step to take next is to parent the child. Okay, it is for both mother and father to reorient their life around that new life so the child loses neither their right to life nor their mother and father. So when we talk about the 1 million to 1.5 million embryos on ice in this country, the first thing we should not think is have them adopted. The first thing we need to think is, you made those babies. They are your babies. Go and get them and implant them. Very often, they're not being implanted because they're, the first 2 took, and they're like, 2 is enough for us. And we need to say, you know what? It's not what you want that dictates this. That child has a right to life. Those 5 frozen children have a right to life, and they have a right to be known and loved by you because you made them. And so go get them, even if you have to take out a loan, buy a van, get a bigger house, move in with the parents so that they can help you, right? That actually is what parenting demands, is a life modification. So, because what are the alternatives? The alternative is they're going to lose their life, or they're going to lose their right to their mother and father. Now, so that needs to be number one. It's not somebody else's job to parent a child that you create. Now, sometimes in this tragic, broken world, parents cannot or should not or will not parent the children that they create. And in that sense, adoption serves as a critical child-centric institution to serve the needs of the child. But the first thought is not, let's put that child with another family. We need to have a similar mentality with children on ice. If you made the babies, go get the babies. Now, 20 to 40% of those children in frozen storage have been functionally abandoned. They can't find the birth parents anymore. They're not paying the storage fee. They have no contact information. For those kids, then embryo, not donation, but embryo adoption is the right way to go. An adoption where the intended parents go through all of the same screening, vetting, background checks, home studies, references, post-placement that regular adoptees go through. In those situations, you adopt entire batches of embryos, so at least the children can stay with their sibling groups if possible. In those situations, whenever you can, you make sure there is an open adoption relationship, because those kids, even more than traditional adoptees, are going to have some pretty dystopic questions, like, why am I chronologically older than the mother raising me? Why is it that you chose those 3 siblings I look more like you than the siblings that you raised? Why did you choose them and not me? They need to be able to have access to the parents that created them, and they need to have an open relationship, because there are going to be some questions that deserve to be answered. So I believe that as a last resort, embryo adoption is the just response, but there's an awful lot of things that need to happen before that, primarily for the people that created those babies to take responsibility for those babies.
I want to say one word about the earlier question, what the heck are you guys doing about it? One is education, what we're doing here, what I do with my patients, what you do in every possible forum that you can, right? With your friends, with your family, in your school, etc. Two, then, is politics, legislative court. And three, boys and girls, is prayer. Thanks very much.